on the screen too.
It's live now.
That's good.
Welcome to the Sunday service of Institute for Spiritual Development in Oneonta, New York. I am Jaya Buckland. We're so happy that you're here joining us today. Our reading and homily this morning will be presented by Reverend Renee Ranke.
I'm coming this way, so
Come
I'm
this
gonna
way,
step
I'll
on
slide.
you. We'll slide. We'll slide. Good morning. I loved that prayer you led us in with, Jaya. So for those of you on Facebook Live, you missed it, but it was a very beautiful prayer and very, very meaningful. So thank you. And for those of you who know me, I have to apologize out of the gate because I tend to use a lot of stories. And so in this homily, there are probably several stories that most of you have heard already, but I do promise there's at least one that's brand new because it just happened the other day. So bear with me. Are we good? Yes?
Just, yeah.
Okay. We got a little adjustment going on here, which is good. Which is good.
It's more crooked than it was.
It is more crooked. Just bear with us. I told you we're having a good time, and that's all that matters. You know, little technical difficulties don't put us out. Life is full of technical difficulties, isn't it? Yeah, just ride the waves.
Go with it.
Let me know when we're good. Like the ship is rocking.
Right.
I'm on a rocking ship right now. Can you figure out how that metaphor relates to the search for God? Go ahead. All right, I'm gonna go.
Go.
Excuse the rocking.
Go, Renee.
So, about a month or so ago, I woke up one morning an atheist, which was quite unsettling to me. Just a little strange. All my life, I've believed in God in some form or another. This journey that I'm on has matured my perspective about God's. So my concept of God is always growing and expanding, which is why that prayer that you let us in with, Jaya, means so much. Maybe evolving even is a better word. But I have never not believed. And that morning, I woke up not believing. It was more than feeling like I didn't believe in God, more than atheism, even though I called it being an atheist. It was more than that. It was like a spiritual emptiness. Basically, I woke up not believing in anything with this overhanging sense of life being meaningless. I was very confused, and I immediately went outside with my cup of coffee trying to understand. I kept apologizing to my husband, to my mother, to my ancestors, to God. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. I just don't believe in you today. Now, eventually I went back into the house, sat down for my morning meditation, and when I was finished, I was back to normal. No longer swimming in a pool of spiritual emptiness. Really strange way to start my day, yes. But being me, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and went on with my day. Apparently, I've gotten to the point in this spiritual journey of mine where these kinds of things are just an accepted new normal. I don't know. But later that same day, I received an email and suddenly everything made sense. The email was from someone who wanted to have a reading that day. And this person was the friend of a friend. Now, my friend had approached me several weeks before and told me that his friend had recently lost someone close to her. And this person had been an atheist and struggled spiritually. And she wanted a reading because she was concerned about how he was. So somehow he had known that this would be the day she contacted me. And what I had experienced was actually evidential mediumship. And when you think about it, how else could a message be sent to tell me how he felt when he was here in the physical? That meaninglessness, that pointlessness, that lack of belief, it couldn't really be communicated through visuals. It really had to be feelings. So once I understood, I was able to tune back in and get the message that needed to be passed along. But as often happens with my messaging, there was a lesson in there for me also. About a week afterwards, I clearly heard a voice say to me, I should be angry with you. And again, it took me a couple minutes, because it always takes me a couple of minutes when these things happen. And then I was like, oh, wait, what did I do? What did I do now? What's going on now? That was my initial response. And then a memory of that morning floated into me. Oh, yeah, well, I guess you should be angry with me. How would I feel if you suddenly came to me and said, I don't believe in you anymore? But I don't think it was exactly that. What I had been given was the beautiful experience to aid me on my own journey to understanding who God is to me. And instead I got confused and actually thought I had lost something that it's an inherent part of me. It was pretty simple, really. If I had actually truly lost faith and belief and decided that this physical journey was meaningless, that there was no God, no meaning in life, most likely I probably wouldn't have been apologizing to God and my loved ones in spirit at the same time. But this whole incident got me to thinking, that feeling that I picked up on of the pointlessness in life, how many are going through that at this point in time? At this juncture in history, as we work our way through difficult challenges, as we step into change, how many people are suffering because they don't realize that they have a connection to something that's so much bigger? I guess it helped me to begin to realize how important our spiritual beliefs are. And it took me back to some early places on my journey. And these are some of the stories that are going to be repeats. So I may have shared them with you before. I apologize in advance to those of you who've heard them, but I feel like they're important. This journey to finding and understanding God has really become the foundation stone of my own personal ongoing spiritual journey. So way back when I first sat down to tell my parents that I was doing work as a psychic medium, my conservative Catholic father listened to me very quietly. And when I was finished, he turned to me and said, let me ask you a question. Is God a man or a woman? Kimberly, I liked that face because I think that was exactly the face that I made. It took me a minute to recover from the shock of that being the first question he had. And then I thought about it. And of course, I tried to stumble through it. I was like, I feel like it's almost both. The first perfect marriage we all descended from. And his response to me was wrong. It's neither. God is something that we cannot understand. Well, at that point, I just kind of nodded and dropped the subject. But now, years later, I've developed an opinion, a belief, if you will, but I'll get to that shortly. Hi, Poppy. The next story I wanted to share with you happened somewhere around the same time. I was tuning into spirit and received the message, you still believe in Santa Claus. Thought about that and pictured Santa Claus, this kindly old man who brought me presents. And I realized that, yeah, that really had been the visual that I had developed around God. You know, it started somewhere in my childhood and it just kind of continued. Someone to pray to when I really wanted something, or someone to complain to when things weren't going the way that I wanted. Santa Claus indeed. So it was through these two experiences, one brought forward by a loved one who's here in the physical with me, my dad, and one that I was led to directly by spirit, that helped me to kick off, to start my own search for God, to realize it was time to evolve my understanding and let it develop. Now, from the beginning of time, mankind has searched for God, for that higher power that could help them make sense of things, right? And if we follow some of the sacred texts like the Bible, that search would have begun at the moment that we separated ourselves from our source. That moment that we stepped into this physical existence and forgot who we were. Now, as I was researching, I found a writing by a Buddhist who was trying to explain why the Buddha did not believe in God. Which is interesting because, again, he let us in with a really great Buddhist prayer, which was very based in spirituality and divinity, right? And he talks about the fact that Buddha didn't believe in God because he believed that God was based in fear. There's a quote from the Buddha that says, "Gripped by fear, men go to the sacred mountains, sacred groves, sacred trees, and shrines." And in some ways, this kind of makes sense if you think about it. If we think about the search of God from an evolutionary perspective, remember I mentioned that earlier. In ancient times, there were so many things that weren't understood. What caused an earthquake, or lightning and thunder, or an eclipse? What had we done to anger this god or gods, and how did we ensure that we received protection from their wrath? Far away, angry God, who we thought required us to make sacrifices in exchange for protection. And then there were the many gods of the Greeks and the Romans, or the nature gods of the pagans, and the spirit gods of the indigenous people. Kind of a way for us to bring the concept of God closer to us and to meld our understanding of our physical environment together with our spiritual understanding of the divine. It's making it a little more personal. These many aspects of divinity that were much closer to humanity, and they pulled together different strands of that unknown, that God, and knitted them into beings that we could better understand. So here's my news story for you. None of you have, not even my friend Alka's heard this one. The other night, as I was drifting off to sleep, as usual, I was working on the homily in my head, right? And I was picturing the God of the Old Testament and the gods of the Romans and the Greeks. And I was thinking about how far away and separated from us they seemed. And then suddenly in my left ear, there was a sound like a radio turning on. And I heard a voice say, "And who is it that changed that?" Okay, another voice in my ear. Deal. Answer was Jesus. From my upbringing, the Christian stories of the New Testament that brought forth a more gentle, caring, parental God that concentrated on the love. That God that loved us implicitly and wanted us to understand that perfection was not necessary for that love. We didn't need to earn it. It was already a given. That is the God that I believe in, the one that I was brought up to believe in. Now, when I was a child in the midst of my Catholic school education, that vision of Santa Claus that I developed was not one that was prejudiced or favored Catholics over others. So from a very young age, I understood that my God was not all there was. I intuitively knew that when someone believed differently and they showed up at those pearly gates, my God would appear as their God. Now, I no longer believe theoretically in the pearly gates per se, but I still believe in the diversity of my vision of God. So let's go back to my dad's philosophic argument that God is too great of a concept for us to understand. And that may well be true. But I sometimes wonder if the concept of God is actually much simpler than we truly realize, and at the same time as complex as my dad believes. So if each one of us, every single one of us, is connected to our source, to God, by a unique thread, then the complete picture of God would be next to impossible for us, right? After all, we can't see through the eyes of everyone to see that full, completed tapestry of the divine. What we can do is understand that our picture will always be somewhat incomplete, and allow ourselves to continue searching for those missing pieces. The more we allow ourselves to view what others believe, the wider our own understanding becomes. And it's only now that I'm beginning to understand that my God doesn't actually become something else for people who believe differently. My God has always been the all, has always been my God and their God. So let me see if I can bring this into a more concrete light. I view this relationship with my divinity, with God, as just that, a relationship, a marriage, if you will. And as a marriage progresses, you learn new things about your spouse. And as time goes on, your understanding of them widens, deepens, it matures. So what I knew of my husband was through my experiences in our relationship. Boyfriend Ken, fiance Ken, best friend Ken, husband Ken. But there was so much more to him. There was the Ken his parents knew, the Ken that his co-workers knew, the Ken that his childhood friends knew, the Ken that his adult friends knew, the Ken his ex-wife knew, the Ken that his children knew, and maybe most importantly of all, the Ken that he himself knew. And each time that I was able to view a little bit of those other versions of Ken, my understanding of him became more expansive. So the same can be said for God. If I narrow myself to only what I believe, then I'm not getting a complete picture. If I try to understand and open myself to the God that others experience and believe in, if I allow myself to realize that even those who don't believe in a supreme deity have something to offer to my understanding, a piece of the God puzzle, if you will, then that tapestry just becomes more prismatic and that relationship more meaningful, more developed, right? And maybe it's the simplicity of what we're looking for when we search for God. You know, I called this homily Love 101 for a reason. If the full picture of God is found in the realization that each and every one of us is a part of that picture, then all it takes to begin to experience the bigger picture is to find the love that connects us all. Jewish, Islamic, Buddhist, atheist, Christian, pagan, it really doesn't matter what you believe in, as long as you allow yourself to open to love. Because within that love are the answers that we all search for. The whys, the hows, the wheretofores, and the henceforths. As for my personal journey, I don't know if I'm further away from being able to understand God or if I'm standing right on the threshold to true insight. What I do know is that there are some things that words can't do justice to. You just have to dive in and experience them. Just like I could only understand how that spirit who visited me felt in the physical world through my feelings, maybe that is also the only way to truly begin to understand the part of divinity that's yours, by just allowing yourself to step in and experience that love. Thank you.
I'm gonna fix this now.
Thank you, Renee. This concludes our Facebook portion of the service.
Tom.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Facebook.
Please remember to check our website for information on upcoming events.
ISD Oneonta.org.
ISDOneonta.org, yes.
All right.